There has been a video circulating recently on the internet that has been deemed viral status. It is the video of Royce Mann, a 14-year-old Atlanta resident who is filmed participating in his school's poetry contest. While this in and of itself is nothing remarkable, the subject matter of the poem has carried the video to the country's attention due to the heightened state of racial tension from recent shootings. This explains why the video has become so popular, now at over 900,000 views at the time of this recording. There are many differing facets to Royce's poem, facets I believe deserve a delving into, especially since the dialogue in this country has become less reasonable and more divided. Royce's poem, titled White Boy Privilege, begins by apologizing to women, immigrants, various minorities, and anyone else who is not a, quote, middle or upper-class white boy. Royce apologizes for being born at the top of the socioeconomic ladder in America, while everyone else was born on the bottom rung. The sorrow Royce expresses in the beginning of the poem is quite understandable. If one is truly aware of their own existence and of other people's existence, one cannot help but see that there are many people who simply do not have the same opportunities as you do. It is understandable, then, that a reasonable person would feel a certain amount of guilt about their privileged situation in comparison to others. While Royce does indeed enjoy many privileges by being born to a Caucasian, middle to upper class family in America, such as attending a private school, the fallacy being committed here in the poem is the thought that being born to privilege in an unequal world is for some reason a wicked and unjust state. No person can dictate where and in what situation they will be born into. It would be the same as saying that someone born in extreme poverty and with the wrong skin color are in a wicked and unjust state. Royce obviously wouldn't agree that one should feel guilt and apologize for being poor and having dark skin, but that is the exact same reasoning he applies to himself. Royce, however guilty he may feel, should not hold on to a self-destructive and self-loathing perception and philosophy about the state of existence he was brought into. Thinking this way is likely to hamper the goals Royce desires to reach, as apologizing for his existence is just the same mental modern-day equivalent to the ancient fallacy that physical self-mortification somehow makes one a moral, just, and righteous person. What Royce can feel guilty about is if he chooses to do nothing to better the world while in his state of privilege. The very next part of the poem goes into this line of personal questioning. Royce says that he would gladly trade places with another individual who was living such a harsh life, but Royce is honest enough with himself to wonder if he truly had that opportunity, would he take it? Royce has to admit that more than likely he would not. It's not that he likes that others don't have the same opportunities as he does, or that people being stuck on different rungs of the societal ladder is something he's okay with. No, the reason Royce wouldn't trade places is because he loves being privileged and he doesn't want that taken away from him. Royce then goes through a list of comparisons. He isn't judged on how he speaks through the prism of his skin color. He doesn't have to put on makeup to meet the expectation of some other person's arbitrary meaning of beauty. He doesn't have to worry about where his next meal is coming from, and he doesn't have to worry about being oppressed by those who are in power. He worries how he would fare in a world where all of his privileges were stripped away. Would he be able to succeed when everyone was only telling him he would fail? These are excellent points I believe all of us must examine within our own selves. It doesn't matter if you are on top of the world or plunging through rock bottom. If we stop taking the time to have thoughtful and balanced introspection upon ourselves, we will no longer find the time to be grateful or to help others. Unfortunately, Royce's self-loathing breaks through his thoughtful questioning as he takes another poetic stab at himself for having a white boy safety blankie to protect him. He ends his line of questioning by wondering if he could live such a harsh life. If he could, quote, live the life you live. This last line is a terribly sweeping statement and generalization that destroys the contemplative and impressive string of grilling questions Royce threw upon himself. Even if this was not Royce's intent, his poem's own argument thus far states that anyone who is not a middle or upper-class white boy has not lived a life of privilege. This statement unintentionally cheapens both white boys and everyone else, as Royce outlines an extremely narrow definition of a privileged life that does not account for each individual's own perception of what said privileged life means to them. While it is an understandable mistake, Royce fails to realize, at least in the writing of this poem, that different people have differing views on what it means to possess a privileged life. While privilege can be measured in money and personal opportunity, it can also be measured in ability to help others and living a good life in harmony with the rest of humanity. The poem then goes on to claim that because of his privilege, when he was born, he already had a success story written for himself. While the next line brings back some level-headedness by illustrating how many are at a disadvantage in comparison to himself, and that there is enough privilege to go around for everyone, Royce derails his argument again by saying that these privileges should instead be rights. These lines are very well-meaning, but it is ignoring the facts of life. I could tell you story after story about myself and others I have known who have squandered amazing and immense opportunities. I've witnessed someone personally close to me who was successful in everything they did, but because success came so easily to them, it got to the point where they stopped putting the work in. They stopped trying, and they ruined their life as a result. Their privileges and opportunities didn't stop in life because they suddenly swapped gender or skin color, or even because they suddenly became poor. Their privileges and opportunities stopped because they refused to take advantage of them. Even if a person somehow had every privilege and opportunity offered to them in life, they would still have to make the choice to act upon those opportunities in order for them to be successful. Using Royce's metaphor, even if you had someone dictate every line of your success story to you, you still have to put in the effort to write it down. A story cannot write itself. It is a physical impossibility. The other dangerous thought in these lines is that privilege and opportunity should be rights. While I understand Royce's thinking in this, when privilege and opportunity become rights, their very existence ceases. When every opportunity and privilege is just given to someone with no personal work or effort put into it, how can it truly be appreciated? Privilege and opportunity lose their worth if they are just given away, and the danger of people taking precious things for granted becomes a real possibility. The challenge of obtaining these opportunities and privileges Royce speaks about builds character. The challenge is meant to mold us into something better. The poem, again, unintentionally cheapens the hard-fought accomplishments that any person has achieved in life, but especially those who started their life at a severe disadvantage. I believe Booker T. Washington said it best when, "Nothing ever comes to one that is worth having except as a result of hard work." Another quote from Mr. Washington also highlights that not everyone has the same definition of privilege and success as Royce's poem would lead us to believe. Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life, but by the obstacles which he has overcome. I believe it is clear that opportunity and privilege are not things that are easily obtained. Many of our own life's experience teaches us this. And this oversight is no doubt in part because of the author's youth and inexperience. The poem then shifts to Royce's embarrassment of how people are judged based upon the color of their skin, their gender, how they look, and how much money they make. All of this is scarily true, and the viewers should take this moment to reflect upon what sort of judgmental dispositions they may have. However, realizing that you have preset judgments is not in and of itself a bad thing. Not realizing your propensity to condemnation, however, is. Royce takes these condemnations a step further and says that these same judgments will also determine a person's success and how they must behave. This is not entirely true, nor is it entirely false. I believe that most people have been in situations that showcase both extremes of the spectrum, being able to act as you see fit in one circumstance and, well, not being able to associate with certain others because, well, you just don't have the correct set of beliefs. Not everyone judges based upon appearances, but there are many who will make judgments solely upon your appearance. Royce's embarrassment now settles upon the point he has been building to, but it takes us listening to the rest of the poem to fully understand what he's saying. For some particular reason, the poem shifts its focus from all non-middle to upper-class white boys to specifically just women. Royce says that women can do anything a man can, we just don't give them the chance to. I wonder where Royce's assessment comes from, as in my own personal experience, the vast majority of my bosses were women, and women at all levels of the companies I worked for were treated with as much respect as the men. Perhaps my experience is not typical. I realize that this could be a possibility, and so I don't make the sweeping claim that all women are given a chance and the opportunity to succeed. Therefore, it's not Royce's observations that are his problem, it's his sweeping claim that cheapens the hard-fought opportunities and privileges many women have already and continue to achieve. Royce takes another look at himself as he realizes that it wasn't, quote, 8th grade white boys that created this system, but he says that he and they profit from it every day. He says that their privileges are not noticeable because these privileges don't come as something as we can gain, but rather the lack of injustices that they don't have to go through. This is again taking a very narrow view upon privilege, an especially negative one that seems more like Royce is having an axe to grind than trying to build the metaphorical bridge he ends his poem with. This axe grinding continues as he gives examples that justify his guilt about his gender, ethnicity, and his parents' income. And while all of this introspection is good by realizing how privileged he is, instead of using it positively, he uses this introspection to fuel his guilt and shame. He turns that guilt and shame upon his fellow white boys by saying that he is not sorry for anything that he has said. He doesn't care if they think that the world is turning against them because it's a load of garbage. Royce admits that change can be scary, but that equality shouldn't be. And while this is true, I think we need to be honest and ask ourselves just what kind of change are we asking for? The poem ends with the call for white boys to, quote, act like a woman, to be strong and make a difference. Royce further calls for white boys to let go of their fear and to turn the ladder of privilege into a bridge. While I can definitely get behind the second part of Royce's statement, I can't help but ponder what he means by acting like a woman. I honestly don't blame Royce for thinking that men too often haven't been strong and made a difference. There are still way too many men in America today who have bailed at the first sign of responsibility. But there are still many men who are strong and continue to make a difference. Another thing is that the equality Royce has been pouring out for in this poem suddenly seems to stop when he is essentially saying that these good qualities reside in women, but not in men. He has ended his poem on equality by making white boys unequal in comparison to women, and thus Royce has unintentionally destroyed the logic, purpose, and entire thrust of his poem. And even though now the poem is over, I still have one thing to cover: the point of the poem. The point of the poem was to debunk the American claim that we live in an equal country in an equal world. Royce is ashamed that we deny the obvious inequalities in our country, and while no doubt there are many who are too blind, hateful, or arrogant to see this inequality, Royce still fails to see reality. An essence that truly is missing from the poem is the realization that many people will always judge upon appearance. Is that a good thing? Good heavens, no. But it is reality. And even if we lived in a world where everything was equal in privilege and opportunity, some people would still look down upon others for frivolous and unintelligent reasons. Perhaps this condemnation and prejudice would be based upon what kind of food you liked, or the color of your clothes, or what denomination of money you made your purchases with, instead of being based upon gender, skin color, and income. But these prejudices would still be there. People are imperfect and fallible beings, and some people will always find a reason to hate or discriminate against another person. Denying this fact only makes the hateful of society stronger, as they feed upon our wounds and disadvantages as mostly reasonable people continue to fight each other. Some people will always find a way to be unreasonable and do their best to silence the dissenters, but we do not respond to their unreasonableness by feeling guilty and shame about where life has placed us. We must instead use that privilege and opportunity to help others obtain that same privilege and opportunity. We must stop looking at privilege as a right, let alone a privilege, and realize for what it really is: a blessing. We must remember these blessings and allow it to steel ourselves when others say that the pursuit of a better world is a futile goal. You see, the main problem with white boy privilege is its overall negative reinforcement. It never offers solutions, it only points out problems. It never shows us good examples, it only shows us where the ball has been dropped. It only speaks about guilt and shame, and not upon doing good with the good things that we have been given. It only speaks with a berating voice, and never speaks any words of hope. It says that things and opportunity should be given as opposed to worked for. And while I applaud the poem's attempt at trying to speak about equality, it uses the same platform really to only promote shame, guilt, and apologizing for one's own privileged existence. I could go on, But I really just wanted to talk about the main philosophy and essence within the poem. There's seriously so much to talk about in this 4-minute viral video. I could probably make another 2 videos about it, but I believe that this is all that is necessary. One thing I very much applaud the poem for is that it has prompted me to look at myself and ask if I am really doing enough to help those who haven't been as blessed as I am. And while this good effect has happened to me, one only needs to look at the like-dislike ratio of the video to see how Royce's wording and tone have only sustained the divide within our country about these issues. I do want to briefly touch upon some more technical aspects of the poem. I did find the use of swearing in the poem to be completely unnecessary and quite amateurish. It really only served to remind you that the author of this poem is 14. But that's another thing. I don't think Royce should be getting all the hate he has been receiving online. He is just a kid who has next to no real-world experience. The statements he made in the poem are not the least bit surprising from one with his youth. And just to be clear, I don't have a vendetta against the kid. In fact, I'm quite glad that he is trying to pursue a creative means to express his feelings. I only wish him the best, and I hope he continues to grow as a person and artist. My problem is the dangerous philosophy espoused within this poem. My honest hope is that people can take this poem as an opportunity to reflect upon themselves and wonder if they really are doing everything they can do to help others. This is the OutcastWriter, and that was my rather wordy review of the viral video White Boy Privilege. Go ahead, comment, let me know how you feel about it. I know this is a quite tricky subject, and tensions are high right now if you've been watching the news at all. Even though I don't have a television, even I know how high things are, and this is it's an interesting point that we're in. But I think a big part of the problem with our race relations is that we are just kind of pointing blame as opposed to really doing something about it. But those are just my personal feelings on it. I know a lot of people don't feel the same way I do. But my hope is that this is an attempt to help bridge some unity by promoting hope, and that let's get to work, let's roll up our sleeves and let's do something. And I know within myself, it has promoted me to take a look and be like, okay, I realize I'm not doing enough, not only in this area but in other areas, and I need to start thoughtfully considering what I can do more to help. So yeah, I do appreciate this video, this poem, for that. But anyways, go ahead, let me know what you thought about it. Like, comment, subscribe. Anyway, I appreciate it all. Thank you very much. This is the OutcastWriter, and I just want to remind you all that what we create matters.